Welcome. Welcome, listeners. Welcome. We got another good one for you today. This is another thrilling episode of Turning the Pages. I'm your host, Ethan, of course. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most intriguing and elaborate conspiracy theories out there. I've actually got a little bit of a prompter today to make sure we stay on topic, make sure that we discuss the main points here. And furthermore, I've officially acknowledged my blindness. So these are the major things I'm going through. I'm adulting fully. Not a fan. Anyway, this is a really good one. I've been really proud of the discussion on this one. This one's going to be one of the big conspiracies out there. It's actually not very well known, though. It's one of the most elaborate ones that's out there, though. It's kind of the reason why I had the teleprompter. This one's called the Montauk Project. This tale combines elements of mind control, time travel, teleportation, and even extraterrestrial contact. There's aliens in this. It's a pretty big intertwined story that goes into several other conspiracies as well, such as the Philadelphia experiment. It creates a tapestry of mystery and intrigue. So, with that being said, let's buckle up. Buckle up as we embark on this journey together, and let's talk about the Montauk Project. There's going to be several themes in this topic. Of course, there's going to be sources that we read, material. I'll have my wife put over imagery of the topics I'm discussing, and depending on how spicy I get, I'll also be including some direct excerpts from witness statements and testimonies too. You'll hear audio files from people who say they were there. So. Let's start at the beginning. What exactly is the Montauk Project? Emerging in the early 1990s, this conspiracy theory revolves around alleged, right? Secret government experiments at Camp Hero, which is on Montauk, part of Long Island. I think it's the most eastern point of Long Island. So it's right out there on the Atlantic Ocean, right next to New York. Near a very populated area, right? Put that information in your brain for later. These experiments supposedly explored advanced scientific concepts like mind control, time travel, teleportation, and extraterrestrial communication. As we unravel this theory, you'll see how it connects with other conspiracies, notably the Philadelphia experiment, which is one that I have, of course, talked about. So if you guys haven't heard that one before, I'll have my wife link a playthrough of that one so that way you can go back and get caught up if you need to. I don't believe it's a very long one, so you can get caught up pretty quickly with that one. It is pertinent to this one, so I do recommend going to take at least a gander of that. You don't have to watch my video, but watch a video to get caught up to speed. In the meantime, I'll also explain some. So starting off, we have this location called Camp Hero. It's located at the eastern tip of Long Island, which has a rich history already to locals. It used to be a pretty good tourist destination before the military took control of it. Established as Fort Hero in 1942, it was initially a coastal defense station during World War II. It later became part of the U.S. Air Force's radar surveillance network during the Cold War, housing a SAGE radar tower. Now that is an acronym, but essentially it is just a radar tower crucial for detecting potential Soviet missile threats. So you guys have to remember, pretty much, and it's not guaranteed, not all historians agree on this topic, but essentially right after World War II ended, like the second the bullets stopped, is when the Cold War started, right? So very quickly after this installation was created, its mission statement, if you will, kind of got flipped on its head. So the base was officially decommissioned in 1981 and eventually turned into Camp Hero State Park. Now, let's talk about the Philadelphia experiment. To those who don't want to watch a video real quick, totally fine. No worries, no shame. This alleged military experiment took place in 1943 at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. According to the lore, the U.S. Navy destroyer escort USS Eldridge was made invisible and teleported from Philadelphia to Norfolk, Virginia, and then it was brought back. Proponents of this Montauk Project theory suggest that the experiments at Camp Hero were a continuation of the Philadelphia experiments projects, which of course occurred about 40 years before Montauk did, right? So you're looking at 4 decades of further science that's been established on this topic. The USS Eldridge was officially decommissioned. I talk about that in the podcast. It's a whole thing. It's not really anywhere that you can go look at to get any data for yourself, of course. But key figures and witnesses. This is going to be one of the gentlemen that I talk about, or one of the gentlemen that I talk about. He's got a few books that he wrote. I'll make sure I can link those below as well. They are a PDF. The reason why I say they are a PDF is because they have essentially been scrubbed from the internet. The PDF that I have is also very edited, and I won't even sugarcoat that. It is a little bit edited. I have not been able to track down the original yet. So I'm doing my best, but I clicked like a PDF of a PDF of a PDF of a PDF to get to where I am. Okay, so again, I'll make sure that I link those for the ones that are nerdy. It's only 80 pages, and like 10 of those pages are just documents that are illegible anyways. They're just there for proof's sake. So it's a good dive. I haven't read the whole thing yet because, of course, I'm a busy guy working full time. I'm trying to bang these out and get these posted for you guys so you can stay entertained here. But the number one, arguably, it depends on where you are as far as juiciness goes, but arguably the number one witness in the project, his name was Preston Nichols. He was a pretty big guy. He sadly since passed on. Actually, both of the witnesses that I'm going to bring up have sadly passed on. But Preston Nichols allegedly worked on the project. And he talks about splitting timelines, which I'll get back into the thesis here in the script that I wrote, because it's actually a pretty good one, and I want to make sure that I utilize it. But he had a pretty fantastic story. And again, that's why I'm going to be linking his PDFs, because the gentleman since passed away. I'll let you decide if it was malicious or not. He had a heart attack and then a stroke in his 70s. So it could have been very natural. But at the same time, those are very, very easy ways to make somebody disappear as well, because of what I just said. So I'll let you decide if you think the guy was killed by the government. I personally think he just died of old age, because the government did really good at labeling him a kook. But we'll see. One of the most prominent figures in this entire narrative is Preston Nichols. That's the one that I think is the most important personally. An electrical engineer and author, Nichols claims to have worked on the Montauk Project and recovered repressed memories of his own involvement in the project. His books, The Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, and its sequels are primary sources for this conspiracy. Nichols describes various experiments, technology that was used in them, and the events that transpired, including his work on the mind control experiments, time travel, and encounters with ETs. I will link part of these excerpts below, but he talks about meeting the people from the Philadelphia Project. So he's a direct witness to these guys, and then also worked on other things. So I want to read a couple of his excerpts here. And again, I'll also link some of the stuff that he talks about, so that way you can hear his direct words, no paraphrasing, none of that. But one thing I'm going to read is a pretty cool excerpt. So he talks about working with a gentleman called Duncan. I will let you guys do the deep dive on him, because he's not a main character in this story. So I don't really seek to, dismantle the narrative here. But the Montauk Project gets pretty sick here, because this is where he talks about the split timeline. He says, while the senator was searching for paper trails, by the way, the senator is likely Barry Goldwater. I cannot confirm that, but that's what the general believers of this theory purport. They think that his name was Barry Goldwater. I don't know who he was. No idea. I'm just reading the quotes. He was searching for paper trails that might reveal the secrets of Montauk. I knew that they would, as in Preston, I'm reading from the POV of Preston. I knew that they would not solve my personal mysteries one bit. I had been recognized by people I didn't know, and it was obvious that I had severe memory blocks. What made things so hard to reconcile was that I had a full set of normal memories which which told me where I had been. My memory had improved while working with Duncan, and I eventually realized that I must have been existing on 2 separate time tracks. As bizarre as it may sound, it was the only sensible explanation under the circumstances. As my memory was still largely blocked, there were 3 avenues of approach to the problem. First, I could try to remember, excuse me, I could simply try to remember the other time track through regression or hypnosis. Sidebar. I believe that is what this gentleman ended up doing. He did subject himself to some sort of mental manipulation so he could get some of these memories back, which I'll discuss later. This proved to be very difficult for me and was of virtually no use. Hindsight's always 20/20. Secondly, I could look for clues and hints in our normal time track that the other time track did in fact exist. Thirdly, I could try to find the answers through technology. This would include theories of how the other time track was created and how I ended upon it. The third approach was the easiest. I'm told that many people might find this very confusing, but I was familiar with the theories of the Philadelphia experiment and was not intimidated by physics or electromagnetics. I found it to be plausible. The second approach also proved extremely helpful, but clues were hard to come by. It was now 1989. I started to roam around at the plant at BJM, where I was still working. That is a pseudonym for a company that he was working for. I believe the other company's name was actually Eaton-AIL. It was now 1989. I started to roam around at the plant at BJM, where I was still working. I would talk to different people and dredge up what information I could without trying to appear suspicious. I would also walk around and just sense my own personal gut reaction to the different places in the plant. I became particularly irritated when I would come into a certain room. My innards would just churn. I sensed very strongly that there was something in that room that was disturbing me. I had to investigate it. To summarize briefly of what Preston's talking about, he was, and I'll post the interview so you guys can watch the whole thing if you'd like to. He was discussing the very real likelihood that he was subconsciously tasked with taking on a mission for the United States government. He was essentially a radar technician and electromagnetic physicist, if that's even the correct terminology here. He produced theories about how electromagnets worked and how radar stations worked, and he was essentially just a very smart guy throughout the 40s, 50s, and 60s. He, however, came to terms with the very real possibility that he was subconsciously given a job to do. And when he was given that job to do, his timeline was split into two different and distinct timelines. And I know that sounds very, very, very crazy. But again, you got to give the guy your time if you want to really entertain a theory like that. That's not something that you can just listen to in 30 seconds and be like, oh, yeah, that either happened or it didn't, brother. You're going to need way more time than that. In the 30 minutes that I have personally listened to the interview, because again, I've been very busy, but in the personal 30 minutes I've given to the guy, I'm not really ready to write him off as a kook yet. I'll be really blunt with that. He seems to be very matter of fact and very just like he's talking the way I talk right now. Just very matter of fact, very calm, very, if you believe me, great. If you don't, okay, nothing, no big deal to me, no sweat off my back. He's a very, very cordial gentleman. And so was the guy that interviewed him, which I really respect, because nowadays most people, when you're interviewed for things like this, you're just immediately labeled a conspiracy theorist. You're labeled a crazy person. You're not even allowed to have an alternative thought, which is unfair for all that I would call Americans. I mean, we live upon the First Amendment, right? So, like I've said in our other podcast, I support a Nazi's right to denounce my entire existence. I support that. As long as he doesn't call for violence against me, there's no harm in his words. Anybody who says otherwise needs to grow the fuck up. Sorry. But he was very, very much, I don't know. I don't know if the guy was crazy or not, but he was given a platform to speak on, and he didn't sound crazy to me. That's all I'm going to say. He was allowed to be able to be platformed. Only a couple times did the interviewer even scoff at him or even laugh at his ideas. He was very open and accepting of the idea. So yeah, he was a very big guy. He talks about how he needed to investigate what was going on, how he needed to investigate what's going on at this lab, which is funny. We're going to talk about some TV shows and movies, or really just TV shows that are based upon this. But long story short, everything you've seen in the show that I'm about to say is directly related to or is a spin-off of this project. And if you guys have remembered my age-old thesis of conspiracies, If Hollywood had to make a fucking movie about it or a fucking television show about it, at least a little bit of it's the truth. Like, don't even try to lie to me, man. They do that on purpose. Hollywood was literally designed as a propaganda arm of the US government. They entitled it free press so that way they couldn't claim that it was state run media. But it totally is, okay? That said, I fucking love a lot of television in Hollywood. What's your favorite TV show? Hit me in the comments. Right now, my wife's and I's probably going to be The Rookie on ABC, which is about a guy who has a career change in his 40s and decides to become a cop. Really good TV show, really good actors. But let me know in the comments what your guys' favorite TV show is right now, because chances are it might be what I'm about to say. With that being said, drumroll, the show that we're talking about here is called Stranger Things. And I'm sure that you guys have seen it. I'm sure you guys have heard about it, right? But to bring you up to speed, it takes place in the 80s. It talks about children that were abducted. Most of them were orphaned. And it talks about Eleven and her telepathy, being able to move objects with their mind, being able to see alternate universes and alternate realities, being able to bend time, being able to leave your universe entirely. All of this shit is what Montauk is about. In fact, if you actually Google it, and I swear to God about this, we will post it for you. Wife will help out if you freaking Google it. Stranger Things was originally called Montauk. No bullshit. The show was literally going to be called Montauk. That's it. So that being said, let's explore some of the things that happen in this damn thing. Because I, personally, I believe in this conspiracy wholeheartedly. I believe in this one way more than I believe in the Philadelphia experiment. And the reason why is because of the lack of witnesses. There's no witnesses for the Philadelphia experiment. Most of them died before they could ever talk to anybody, except to this guy. And he's dead now too. So, I mean, the paper trail never ends, you know? So, let's get back on topic here. I'm going to read the finishing of what he said. And we were talking about how we had to investigate it. He said, I rang the doorbell and I was told that I couldn't come in. It was a high security area. Reportedly, only 10 people at the entire plant had the proper clearance to be in that room. I found that virtually no one knew anything about it. Finally, I did find 2 people who had been in there, but they said they couldn't tell me anything. One of them must have turned me in because the security personnel who visited me shortly thereafter. It was time to lay low for a while. About a year after my futile investigation, the room was totally cleared out. The doors were open, and anyone could walk right in. It was obvious that there had been all sorts of equipment. Dirt markings revealed that 4 round things had stood on the floor. I presumed they were coil structures. It was clear that there had been a console. There was also a large power line that still ran into the room. The entire place gave me the creeps, but I was driven to find all that I could. I discovered an elevator in the back of the room. I got it and found only 2 buttons, main floor and subfloor. Now I want to pause there for a minute because that's literally in Stranger Things. Like literally, they go into the elevator, they go down underneath the subterranean floor, and that's where the upside down is when they're in the little hazmat suits, right? I think that's like in seasons 1 and 2. It's in the earlier stage before it gets scary as fuck. Anyway, he said there was also a numbered keypad. I pushed the button for subfloor and tried to go down, but the elevator would only go so far. I heard a voice that told me to punch in the proper coded numbers on the keypad. I didn't have the code, and the beeping noise had went off for about 30 seconds. Security was alerted. I had hit another dead end. I wasn't scoring any points with security, and it was time to lay low once again. I began to think of how I could show that something was, or very unusual was going on. I'd also recalled earlier strange experiences that had occurred while working at BJM. There was a period when all of a sudden a Band-Aid would appear on my hand. It hadn't been there 15 minutes ago. I couldn't remember putting it on. This had happened more than a few times. One day, I had been sitting at my desk, and my hand suddenly started to ache. The back of the hand was sore, and there was a Band-Aid on it. He said, I absolutely knew that I had not put that Band-Aid on, nor had I had it put on. I became very suspicious. I got up and went down to the nurse. I said to her, this may sound wacky, but was I in here for a Band-Aid? No, you weren't in here, she told me. I asked her where I'd gotten it, and she said, you must have gotten it from one of the first aid kits. Don't you remember? I'm just trying to figure it out, I said, and I walked out. And then he thought in his mind, I'm not going to get a Band-Aid at BJM except from the company nurse. I wanted to record, so I made a conviction that I would never use a first aid kit. I eventually remembered the reason I had sustained so many injuries to my hands. I think that's where I'm going to leave it off for now. If you guys want to read more, check my links. Okay, so another key figure in this story is going to be Al Bielek. I think I'm saying the name right. Now, Bielek claims involvement in both the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project. That's why I say, depending on your thesis of juiciness, my guy might be more important, or Al Bielek might. I'll be blunt. I don't know if I like Al Bielek's story. I just feel like he's the guy that's everywhere all the time, and it's a little convenient, you know? Like, I don't know. Think of like the kid in high school, whenever there was a high school fight, that guy's always, oh yeah, dude, I saw that was right there. Yeah, yeah. Or when the big party went down, oh yeah, dude, I was there. You know, we were doing. Guy's just trying to be relevant, right? So I don't know. I haven't listened to Al Bielek's interview at all. I'll be blunt. When I read the stories on Preston, I felt that his thesis was much more credible and much more believable. So I put my value and time into him, right? But I will also link Al Bielek for anybody that wants to read on him. He claims involvement in both the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project. His story involves elements of time travel, identity alteration, and mind control. His accounts are detailed, involving supposed time travels to the years 2137, so like 115 years from now, and 2749, where he observed dystopian and utopian societies respectively. He did claim to, and I don't want to be fucking like, like, but in his theory, he said most of the world was wiped out by nuclear war in 2025. He died like 15 years ago, and he said this like 40 years ago. So, hoping he's wrong. I really am, okay? I really fucking am, because I don't have a bunker yet. Period. So anyways, he observed dystopian realities in the short-term future and utopian societies in like the far 700 years from now future. He also claimed participation in a project to manipulate the timeline and prevent catastrophic future events. And that's where I'm like, can't say he's right or wrong because it's supposedly in the future. And if it's in the future, we have no evidence for or against, right? So we kind of just got to take the guy at his word. Cool. I'll link his interview below so that way you guys can listen. The next guy we have is Duncan Cameron. This is the one that I was talking about earlier. Duncan Cameron, often mentioned alongside Nichols, is said to have been subject in the Montauk experiments. He was supposedly a Montauk boy, meaning he was one of the trafficked children that was involved in these projects. He describes psychic experiences where his abilities were used to control and influence the reality around him. Now, this guy I believe in wholeheartedly, and the only reason why is because my own personal belief that is perspective is reality. My wife and I have talked about it before, but just because I see that tree as green does not mean that you see that tree as green, whether or not you're colorblind. That does not mean that you see the same color as me. That does not mean that you see the same thing as me. Perspective is very, very important, and I believe that it shapes our reality. That said, we can only see 5% of the light rays of our universe. So, take that with what you will. Okay. So he's a Montauk boy. He describes in his involvement, including creating a time travel tunnel and battling a creature brought into existence through one of the experiments. Quite literally through a fucking portal. Very similar to Stranger Things. They have the portal and the giant things, the Demogorgons come through those. All of this shit is like nuanced and dumbed down and put into television for a very fucking specific reason. They are hiding it in front of you. They want you to not believe in it. They want to discredit people like me and regular folks like you for simply thinking that something could be weird out there. He did survive to at least be an adult. There's a photo of him. But I don't know if he's alive today. I really don't. I am going to talk about his abilities though, because they're crazy. So apparently, he could lift up to 100 kilograms with his mind while a child, which is uh bonkers. That's a lot of weight. I feel like that's more than the average person, like average man. Anyways, he could throw things like that. His powers included, and this is an actual transcript of uh, the scientists that were there. So this is one person's abilities. Okay, he knocks 11 out of the fucking water. Okay, he had the seeing eye. He had clairsentience, sight, hearing, smell, and taste, meaning that he could basically see into the future and sense into the future. He had mental scanning. I don't know what the fuck that is. Radar frequency modulation, which is a multi-power. He could do it for up to 20 minutes at a time. Let me see. Thought projection, mind control. He could project his own thoughts and ideas and belief systems into the people around him. Mood alteration as well. Uh, he had psychokinesis, which I think is basically just telekinesis. That's what I was talking about earlier. He can move things with his mind. He had thought reading and mental programming. And then he also had space-time warping, an extra-dimensional movement where any point in time within 50 billion years, future or past, any physical location could be usable by him and the people around him. Jesus. And then the last one, this is the one. Beast from the id. If you guys know what the id is, or if you don't know what it is, I believe it's your subconscious. You have the ego and the id and the superego, I think. It's three perspectives of your personality, essentially. Your subconscious is your true wants and desires, and your ego is what holds you back, essentially. That's why many people that dabble in psychedelics, they seek to have what's called an ego death, so they can get rid of their ego and just let their subconscious really achieve their goals for them. So this thing is called the beast from the id. Putting everything I just put together, I mean that sounds fucking scary, but this was apparently this was the creature that jumped through the portal. And supposedly, according to this document, which I didn't even find until I started recording this live, but apparently this guy could control it. So that's fucking scary. Not a fan of that, even a little bit. Well, with that being said, let's get back onto the topic. I just kind of wanted to touch on him briefly. Let's talk about some of the experiments that they put these people through, though. So, according to the conspiracy, the Montauk Project developed advanced techniques for mind control, drawing from the earlier MK Ultra program. I'll be honest, I don't know if I'm ever going to do an MK Ultra project conspiracy because it very likely led to the death of John F. Kennedy, and that will be its own episode eventually. So I just don't know if I really want to do MK Ultra as well because so much of it is possibly involved in JFK. But if you guys don't know what MK Ultra is, it's just a CIA black budget program where they were blasting people with LSD, acid, a psychedelic. They were blasting people with copious amounts of psychedelic drugs and forcing them to be brainwashed, essentially. It created sleeper agents. It was a very real program that was very successful. Don't let your government tell you otherwise. If they do, they're fucking lying. The MK Ultra project was one of the most successful projects our CIA ever did, and it happened to be against its own people. That's why I don't really want to do a whole episode about it because, frankly put, it'll put my ass deep into the watch list. So we'll save it for JFK, but that's the rundown. So they drew inspiration from this project, and here's the craziest part: MK Ultra was at least for adults, you know. Montauk Project for fucking kids and minors, so that's great, you know. Real government, cool vibes here. Methods included the use of electromagnetic radiation, psychoactive drugs, and sensory deprivation. A key piece of equipment, the Montauk Chair, supposedly enhanced psychic abilities, allowing subjects to project their thoughts and influence physical matter around them. This chair was also said to be instrumental in the time travel experiments. Now, at the time of filming this, I haven't been able to find a photo of this chair. I'm going to try my ass off to find it for you guys because it's pretty fucking sick, based in theory. Now, what I want to draw the parallel to from Stranger Things, they couldn't personify this quite the same thing as Stranger Things. So what they did is they did the salt bath in, I think, season 2 or 3, where Eleven's in the school and she's laying in the bath with the Epsom salt and she's got her eyes closed. That's called a deprivation tank, right? That's what she was simulating to draw ties to the real conspiracy. Now, time travel, I don't know if I believe in this one, but we're going to read it together and we'll find out. The project allegedly succeeded in creating a time tunnel, allowing travel 2 different periods and 2 alternate realities. Now, this tunnel was said to be opened using the Montauk Chair in combination with other technologies. So it wasn't just something you could just whip up on a whim, right? Um, Notable incidents described include traveling to Mars to retrieve ancient alien technology and an expedition to 100,000 BC to observe prehistoric Earth. These time travel experiments were supposedly linked to the USS Eldridge, tying the 2 conspiracies together. Um, Now that's kind of where I'm like, I don't know, because you physically cannot provide evidence for or against. You can't. You got to trust the guy at his word. So with that being said, I put a pin in this. I don't really give a shit about the whole time travel part. Where I'm like, whoa, is with the alternate realities and the split dimensions. Which Preston Nichols, he openly admits that he was subject to at least 2 timelines, but he thinks it may have been a third timeline as well. I think that based off of what he said, there's a very real probability that what he's describing could be the Mandela effect, but he may have witnessed the actual time crunches of them. So he's more aware and he can discuss them, right? Whereas with us, we talk about the cornucopia of the fruit of the loom, the underwear company or whatever, undergarments company. There was a cornucopia behind all the fruits. We all remember it. There's also the Berenstain Bears, where spelling, and then Nelson Mandela. Did he die? Did he not? He's dead now, but for a long time, people could have sworn he was dead for decades before he did. There's a very real possibility that our guy Preston Nichols could have just lived through those and witnessed those and had the wherewithal and the consciousness to understand that he was living through those and catch it. I'm not sure, but I tend to believe in guys like that. Now, the Montauk Project purportedly developed technology capable of teleporting objects and people instantaneously. Okay, this technology was an extension of the Philadelphia experiments in visibility and teleportation research. As I discussed in my earlier podcast episode, that uh, experiment was honestly deemed a failure. Most of the people involved were dead or killed off or deemed clinically insane. So there was no way that you could deem research from it. It was basically just a pass fail. Did we fucking teleport or not? And they did. So do you call that a fail or a win? I guess, but people got killed just to fucking move physical materia from one location to another. Can't justify that. Sorry. Science doesn't involve killing innocent people. Sorry. If that burst your bubble, sorry. Now, let me see. Witnesses describe various tests where individuals were teleported from Montauk to different locations on Earth and beyond, often with disastrous results. Now, the extraterrestrial contact, this is where I start to get excited personally. I love this type of stuff. I believe in this type of stuff. We definitely have been to the moon. We've probably been to Mars, and we're trying to go back to both. But there's forces at play that won't let us. And I don't think it's the government. I don't think it's rich people. I don't think it's a conspiracy that had us faking the landings. I really just think that there's aliens on the moon and on Mars, and they don't fucking want us up there. And they're doing everything they can to prevent us from going back. That's my genuine belief. Let's have a chat about it. I would love to discuss. Now, the Montauk Project allegedly, whoa, made contact with extraterrestrial beings who provided advanced technology and research and knowledge. Now, these beings were said to have a vested interest in the project's success. Why? I don't know. I don't know at all, but I'm just asking out loud, so you ask the same questions as me. Why were they so intrigued about our success of this, right? Sharing technology that facilitated time travel, mind control, and teleportation in exchange for human subjects of their own experiments. Yay. More kidnapping by the aliens. My favorite, dude. Hell yeah. Now, let's get into some key incidents and developments. Now, we have a critical event that occurred in 1983, smack dab in the middle of Stranger Things. Like, come on, dude. It's way too convenient the way they set this shit up. A critical event in the Montauk narrative is the opening of a time portal in 1983, directly linking the base to the USS Eldridge. This event allegedly caused chaos with a monstrous creature manifesting and rampaging through the base. The incident supposedly led to the shutdown of the entire project. The creature, often described as a beast from the id, was eventually neutralized, but the damage was already done and the base was sealed, with records destroyed to cover up the events. Now, we do have some personal accounts, personal claims, but many claims about the Montauk Project come from individuals who allege they recovered repressed memories of their involvement. These accounts often include detailed descriptions of experiments, technologies, and interactions with other participants, often recovered through hypnosis, adding another layer of controversy regarding their liability. I don't personally believe in discrediting people for accomplishing repressed memory recollection. For example, let's get mature for a moment, have a real big discussion. But sexual assault victims, trafficking victims, prisoners of war, people of severe PTSD have repressed memory recollection all the fucking time. To a lesser degree, I have. Long story short, you guys are going to come to know this about me eventually in podcasting, but I have buried more people than I have been to birthday parties, graduation parties. Like, it's bad. And I'm now at the point where I've buried so many people that I care about and I love that my brain has actually made me physically forget some of the ones that, for lack of better phrasing, occurred between bigger moments in life. And I don't want to sound dismissive, but that's what my brain did so I could cope. It's literally made me forget certain people that I've loved dearly that have died. And there's occasional moments in time where the veil is really thin between maybe us and them. And I sense them again. I'm like, whoa, holy fuck, I didn't realize that person was dead. And then you have that moment. And it's hard, you know? But basically what I'm getting at here is I do not discredit people who have repressed memory recollection because I've experienced it and the memories are just as real as if they've happened the other day, right? So I think that's case by case. I think to be a skeptic of somebody just for having a bad memory is a bit ironic. The human memory is incredibly flawed. It always has been. So for you to say, oh, this guy's a fucking liar. Well, who are you, big guy? Like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people out there who think that they're very moral, honest, and ethical people, but they're not. So I don't know. I tend to believe the underdogs, and Preston Nichols and Duncan Cameron. They seem to be pretty big underdogs. Al Bielek, I don't know. We'll see. I'll link his stuff. You guys decide. Uh, as I've discussed multiple times on this podcast, whether or not I believe in somebody or not, I believe in their right to state their opinion. And I think Al Bielek had a pretty cool little thesis about going to different timelines, but I don't believe in him. I just believe in Preston and I believe in Duncan. I think both of those men were very honorable and ethical people. Again, I personally recommend listening to Preston's podcast, not his podcast, Jesus. His speech that he had was very good. He talks about how he recalled these memories. And again, the person interviewing him was very respectful. He wasn't a dirtbag at all. And I think that when you create those platforms where you're not throwing dirt on the guy, you're just letting him talk, you know? They can really establish a thesis that's believable. And I'll be frank, I really do believe that this happened. I believe that this type of stuff is still happening. Um, we've done some crazy shit. I honestly think that our government has put humans on entirely different planets before. They haven't told us. But I can't prove that, and neither can you. So in the meantime, we're going to try to just talk about it. Hopefully, we can bridge the gap a little bit between reality and science fiction. The only difference between science fiction and reality is a couple decades. Let's be blunt, right? What was once thought of as the craziest thing is now on your fucking phones half the time, you know? So, getting off that serious sidebar though, I don't believe in the skepticism, but of course, to keep things legit, we will go over it a little bit. Now, despite the intriguing narrative, the Montauk Project does face significant skepticism. They do point to the lack of tangible evidence, which I also stated. You can't, but the lack of tangible evidence doesn't really disprove or approve of anything. It really just states, hey, we don't have anything to go off of. We have a story. Is it real or is it fake? We don't know, right? We don't know. So that's what they use. They use lack of tangible evidence, inconsistencies in the story, which, again, if the timelines have been split, no fucking shit, the fucking stories aren't going to be implausible and inconsistent because they are having multiple timelines be discussed. I will link his full unadulterated interview. I said that 100 times and I'm sorry, but I will link the damn interview so you can listen to it for yourself. I genuinely believe that what he is talking about is his true experience. Whether that's the truth of the world, I'm not sure, but I believe that that is his truth and his personal experience. So I'm not going to discredit that for him. The implausibility of the described technologies. So one of the big theories, or counter theories, if you will, is that the technology that was discussed in that time physically could not have existed in that time, which, phooey, bullshit. The government regularly hides stuff from us for decades before unveiling it later on. Like, for example, 30-second sidebar. And I'll post these for you as well. I'll have it posted over me right here at a moment's notice for you to look at while I'm talking about it. But in the 1950s, the United States fucking patented the UFO. It's called a lenticular reentry vehicle. It's called an LRV, and it's literally a disc-shaped fucking drone, essentially, that has just a little tail on the end of it for wind navigation, but is literally a UFO. And we patented it 70 fucking years ago. Okay? So when people say that, oh, that technology couldn't exist, okay, no, maybe not in your physical hands today, but somebody had it. Okay? Somebody had it. So psychologists suggest that these accounts may just be the result of false memories influenced by hypnosis and suggestive questioning, compounded by cognitive biases. Now, I studied law for 2 years. I can confidently state that that's a real thing. They actually do not allow that in a court of law. It's called leading the witness. You can't during direct examination, which means I can't interview my guy. I can't interview my guy and ask him questions that are already prompting him to say yes. Leading him. You're leading the guy to give you the story that you want, whether or not that's actually the story that happened. So I do believe in that counter argument. These memories very well could just be cognitive bias and leading witnesses. I don't know. I don't know. I don't. Furthermore, the Montauk Project bears striking resemblances and themes from science fiction literature and media. The popular Netflix series Stranger Things, originally titled Montauk, heavily drew inspiration from these narratives, further blurring the lines between fiction and supposed reality. God, I got hiccups bad today. I chose a terrible day to film. Now, that's another one I can't really use as discreditation because that came out 30 to 40 years after the project did. And it only came out with the invention of the internet. People were starting to find shit again. They didn't like it. So they made a whole show about it. And they said, oh, it was just inspiration. Was it? Or were you guys just literally reanimating a conspiracy so we believed in it as sci-fi media instead of something that actually fucking happened and was sanctioned by the US government, kidnapping kids and throwing them to Mars? Sorry. Got a little off the meds there for a second. Now, what am I talking about? I'm always off my meds. Are you fucking kidding me? That's why I have a podcast like this. I am unhinged. Anyways, Despite the skepticism, the Montauk Project remains a staple in conspiracy theories communities. It's discussed in forums, it's discussed in podcasts, it's discussed on YouTube channels, and dedicated to uncovering hidden truths. Its blend of science fiction, historical intrigue, and psychological mystery continues to captivate the public's imagination. Numerous books and documentaries delve into the Montauk Project, some of which I will link for you guys to further read below, with varying degrees of investigative journalism and speculative fiction. Films like the Montauk Chronicles explore further the testimonies and claims of alleged participants, blending investigative reporting with dramatic reenactments. Now, that is kind of like Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, right? Some of what they talk about on the Ancient Alien show is very real and very awesome, but the reenactments they do and the dramatizations that they do really water down the messaging, you know? So I do agree that like science fiction and media and Hollywood have kind of blurred the lines there a little bit by over dramatizing it a little bit. That's kind of why I'm not going down each individual event, each rabbit hole, each thing that happened. I'm kind of just touching on it briefly. That way, if you guys want to go further, feel free. Feel absolutely free. This is a fucking deep dive. Deep dive. I could have probably talked about this for 3 hours today, but I'm trying to limit myself. Despite that, it's being discussed very regularly now because of Stranger Things. Ironically, it was not very well known until Stranger Things came out, so they kind of fucking shot themselves in the foot. Ironic. Numerous books and documentaries exist on it, like I've discussed. They explore the testimonies, they blend the investigative reporting. Now, with that said, we got to circle back to I don't know what I want to call it, my shtick, if you will. My shtick of this podcast at the end of my series, I tell you if I believe it or not. This one is a resounding 100% yes. I believe this happened. I 1000% believe this happened. And the reason why I believe it happened is because of the counter intelligence, if you will, against it. They discredited everybody. They made them all look crazy. And then you listen to them. And whoop-de-doo, what do you know? They're not fucking crazy at all. I'll be as blunt as possible. Kanye said much more unhinged shit than Preston did. He said much more unhinged shit than Al Bielek did. And Bielek said he fucking time traveled 600 years in the fucking future, okay? So, take it with a grain of salt. I personally believe it's real because there's two ways the government works. They either do disinformation and they spew the story they want you to believe, or they just kill you. That's the thesis. These men didn't die, but they had a misinformation campaign against them. They had TV shows made about them and all this shit, right? So I personally believe in it 100%. That wraps up our deep dive today on the Montauk Project. Whether you believe it or not, it is a complex web of hidden truth and fascinating tale, or is a fascinating tale from the threads of imagination. So there's no denying that its impact on our collective consciousness is there. I do think that the future is going to dictate whether this story is real or not, because so much of it is predicated on being in the future. So we'll just kind of have to sit back and hopefully a nuclear war doesn't happen in the next year. But I'll be fucking frank, it's sure gearing up for it. So thank you for joining us on this journey today through time and mystery. Be sure to tune in next time. And until then, be careful of the world around you. Be safe, be kind, and don't get sucked into this future because it doesn't seem to be good. Have a good one, guys. Take care. Gosh, my nose is driving me nuts today. I need to shave my little nose hairs, I think. As you can tell, I'm a very hairy Jew. Nothing has changed. Nothing is new. Goodness gracious. All right, my wife's gonna have a heyday with this one. She's gonna freaking make memes out of me for sure. I'm positive of it.